What's up, everybody? Welcome into Hockey Sense. We come your way every Friday. It's available on all podcast channels. If you're new to just finding us on YouTube or the podcast, here's how it went down. I mean, for years, we've been on local radio. We just recently, within the last month, have now taken it purely to podcast. I mean, you guys all listen on podcasts anyway. I had somebody recently tell me that their generation wants to listen on their terms, you know, when they want to listen. I said, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. And to be honest with you, even at the radio station, my podcast numbers were always super, super strong. And I think the overwhelming majority of people listen on the podcast app anyway. So welcome back in. Listen, nothing like doing a show in August. And a lot of times, if you follow the show over the years, in August, I like to bring people in. We get a lot of NHL players who are from St. Louis. They come back to St. Louis. We bring them in, have good conversation. But we don't always get breaking news in the month of August. And that's what we have now on this edition of Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. First Community, nobody does more for the hockey community in St. Louis than First Community. It seems like everything that the Blues get behind or anything in relation to growing the game, First Community is right there, front and center, including the Little Blues program. Sign up today. Get your son or daughter involved in the game of hockey. Get them to love the game. First and foremost, get them to love the game. Listen, there's a lot of stuff that goes on as they get older. Hockey, for the most part, is always fun. The only people that can kind of get in the way of it being fun can be the parents. We all know that. We always can't control that. But for First Community, they are putting the fun back in hockey and getting a lot of kids interested in the game. That Little Blues program is incredible. I think they get like 6 ice times, great instruction, and it's all at the Blues practice facility. You get visits from Blues players, great coaching, and all the equipment is free. Are you kidding me? All the equipment, skates, helmet, everything in between, you get. So before you commit thousands and thousands of dollars, find out if your son or daughter even wants to play. And this is the best way to do it. Do a couple of sessions. That's what I did with my son. We did multiple sessions when he was young. The ages 4 to 9. If they've done organized hockey, you're not necessarily eligible. So this is kind of a learn to skate and a learn to play all in one. Great to have you with us once again. I want to say we had Mr. Braceful on the show last week from the National Team Development Program, and he was fantastic. Rod Braceful's his name. They call him Rod the Bod. He was fantastic. We've had some good conversations already. If you're just tuning in right now, look at some of the previous episodes. We had an incredible conversation with Doug Armstrong 2 weeks ago. That is still available on YouTube, the podcast app. A lot of that information is evergreen. It will not be old news now because a lot of it is kind of looking forward to this coming season. One thing we didn't talk about were potential offer sheets, which obviously has happened. We'll get into that here in just a second. A few weeks back, we had Jake Neighbors on. He looks fantastic, by the way. Hey, word is that Jake Neighbors is looking huge, man. He's like really put on some muscle, really filled out. He was a thick player anyway in terms of, having good size and being a legit power forward in the NHL. And now he's going to come into camp in even better shape. So that's great to hear about Jake Neighbors, man. We'll see if he can improve on his numbers from last year. 27 goals last season, high shooting percentage. I think he was second on the team in power play goals. He was leading the team in power play goals pretty much all of the second half until Kyrou, I think, maybe took over. But and Neighbors got hurt down the stretch at the end of the season. So, and he's all good to go too. So check out those interviews. All right, a couple things I want to get into first, real quick. So Philip Broberg, listen, I know this caught a lot of people by surprise, and for good reason. Nobody really knew about it. There are people in the Blues organization that didn't know about it. There's people in the Edmonton Oilers organization who confirmed that they had no clue, did not see this coming. You have to be very strategic in terms of when you sign these players to offer sheets. Elliot Friedman had a good breakdown on his 32 Thoughts podcast within the last day or so. In terms of the buyout windows and some of that, you also have to be able to have compensation to offer the other team in the event that that team does not match. So if Edmonton chooses not to match, in the case of Philip Broberg, the Blues are going to have to offer up a second-round pick as compensation, but it can't be any second-round pick. It has to be your original second-round pick. So the Blues had to make a deal with Pittsburgh to get their original second-round pick back that they had given to Pittsburgh. Otherwise, this deal would not have been made possible. And, I said on several interviews that I've done over the course of the last several days since this news broke. And I'm sure many of you maybe have heard some of those interviews in Toronto or Edmonton or Ottawa and some of the different locations on the TSN, networks and some of the radio stations in Edmonton. Listen, I think the Blues had some interest in both of these players before. I know they were on the radar. I heard their names during the course of the season. So it wasn't like they just woke up and said, yeah, Broberg would be nice. And I know there's lots of talk, and I'm pretty sure I was the first person to say so, about, Doug Armstrong's relationship with Kenny Holland. I don't think Doug Armstrong would offer both of these players if Kenny Holland was still the general manager. I don't think he's going to look to stick it up one of his close buddies. But, with Holland no longer there and kind of the way that went down, it opened the door for something like this to happen. I know people, and Elliot talked about, Doug Armstrong being ruthless. And listen, I get that. I guess he can be. He's a pretty nice guy in reality. You get to know him. He's all business. He doesn't really have a whole lot of extracurricular time to just kind of, play ball with you a little bit. He wants to get down to business and get things done. I think a lot of people can respect that. But I don't think this was a ruthless maneuver. I mean, it's perfectly legal within the collective bargaining agreement, and I don't understand why we don't see more teams doing it. Why wouldn't you utilize this if you're a general manager, especially if you're a GM of a team like St. Louis? I mean, let's be honest and break it down. Where are all the prime free agents signing right now? Where are they going? They're going to the tax-free states. They want to go to Florida. They want to go to Tampa. They want to go to Nashville. They want to go to Vegas. Teams are finding their way to teams like Dallas. I mean, maybe a Colorado, the way of style of the lifestyle in Colorado is obviously incredible. They are a contending team with two cornerstone players at the top, one up front and one on the back end. Not even getting to Mikko Rantanen, not even getting to a guy like Landeskog, who obviously has been hurt. But when you've got McKinnon and Makar, that makes Colorado a destination. I think a lot of the original six teams become destinations because of their history. Teams like Boston, teams like Chicago, especially now with Connor Bedard there, and living in Chicago is always, something I think players around the league would say that they would invite into their lives to be able to live in a market like Chicago. They have a history of winning, the Chicago Blackhawks' recent history. Then you get to the Canadian cities, which pull at the heartstrings. A lot of players in the NHL come from the greater Toronto area, grew up diehard fans of the Maple Leafs. There may be some interest for a Toronto kid to want to play for his hometown team. Same thing with the, Montreal Canadiens, maybe the Vancouver Canucks, for example, as well. I don't know if everyone's lining up to go play in Ottawa. Maybe they are. But again, Canadian kid, listen, they'd have no problem playing in Canada. And again, if Ottawa gets their team back into playoff contention, then, they would certainly be a destination. But you know where I'm going with this. It is not easy for a team like St. Louis, for example, I think, to attract free agents. I'm careful when I say that, because players who play here absolutely love it. They have for years. They've always had a very strong Blues alumni who choose to stay here. Even recent players, guys like Barrett Jackman still live here. Chris Pronger still lives here. Obviously you get into the Al McInneses and, you see Wayne Gretzky having a house here and Wayne Gretzky, spending a lot of time here. Now, there's a lot of times, these players, they marry St. Louis girls and, maybe that's part of it. But there's a certain lifestyle that you get here in St. Louis that I think NHL players appreciate and they love once they get introduced to it. But you only know what you know. And when you're a visiting player, you go to the hotel, you jump off the plane, go straight to the hotel, maybe go to the rink. You're not seeing some of the neighborhoods, so you really have no idea. So, you can kind of understand. If you're a single 26-year-old kid, 27-year-old, 24-year-old, whatever it is, and you have options, we all know that, there are certain destinations that are more attractive than others. So what I'm getting at is this is a legal route and a legal path to take to improve your team. Take some creativity, take some balls. We all know that. But if you don't have balls, then you shouldn't be managing in the National Hockey League. Flat out. If you're afraid to make a move like this, you shouldn't be managing in the NHL. Now, I understand maybe protecting some of your relationships. I get that. But in this particular case, the door was wide open. And then you look at teams which are handcuffed financially. Edmonton being one of those right now. They're up against it. They've got some monster contracts looming, monster negotiations looming with Draisaitl and McDavid, and obviously Evan Bouchard. If you're Evan Bouchard, by the way, I don't know how you take one penny less than Darnell Nurse. And I don't know how Edmonton can get away with that. They signed Nurse. And I'll be curious to see what Nurse's age was when he signed versus Bouchard. I should look that up. Versus when Bouchard's contract is expiring. How old was Nurse when he signed that deal? How many games had he played? What do their numbers look like side by side? I'm going to have to do a comparison. But Evan Bouchard is going to be in a situation where he's probably going to be able to command some big-time dollars. And if I'm him, hey, listen, this is what I want. There's talk about Philip Broberg requesting a trade, not being happy with his development there in Edmonton, how long it kind of took for him to get to the NHL. He only played 18 games last season. He's played 81 games in his career in the regular season. Obviously, played a lot of playoff games. Talking to some players from the Florida Panthers, by the way, they love this guy. They think this guy is legit, a true 8th overall pick. I know some guys are drafted 8th overall, but this guy is proving that he is worthy of that selection and has tremendous upside. And I don't think it would hurt Philip Broberg if he found his way out of Edmonton based on the current situation. Wants to play on the left side. The Blues obviously have a need for a left shot D-man. That's why they went out and got Ryan Suter, but you can always push him down. And I think Broberg would be given the opportunity right off the bat to play, next to a guy like Colton Parayko, and play significant minutes. I know some people say, well, his salary is going to go skyrocket from what he's making now all the way to 4.5, and it is. He's going to get like a significant pay increase. But with that being said, his role on the team, how many minutes he's going to play, the opportunity to produce, and what his production might look like, at the end of the day, he's probably going to be worthy of a $4.5 million player. It just probably wasn't expected to come as soon as it's gotten here. So, you look at teams, who are handcuffed financially, and you target those teams. You're not going to sign a player to an offer sheet if it doesn't make sense, if it's easy for the team to match. You want to make it difficult for the team to match. And so as much as we want to focus on the relationship between Kenny Holland and Doug Armstrong, this was truly a hockey decision as well when you consider the Blues' need for a left shot D, their struggle attracting big-time free agents right now, and two good players in Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. Holloway, obviously a big body, still scratching the surface as an NHL winger. He can get up and down the ice. He's got size. He's got speed. He can really enhance the Blues' overall speed. And I think he's shown that he can score, too. I think he hasn't really gotten to where he ultimately will be in terms of what his ceiling is for his offensive production. So he'll get there. You really got to look at the agents and their role in how this all plays out. And from what I understand, Darren Ferris, who is the agent for Broberg, played a significant role in this. And not just because he's Broberg's agent. But I don't think the Blues could have gotten this done by just signing Broberg alone to an offer sheet. I think it would have been a much easier situation for Edmonton to deal with. And I think on the agent side, there's a lot of work that's done there to loop in the second player and to loop in the second agent. They work in unison with the team. I know the team had a lot to do with that as well. But, the agents know what's going on with that specific player more than the team does when you get to this point, right? They've been dealing with Edmonton and the specific player in terms of where things are at for the last several months. So they have a head start. They can kind of fill in the team. Kenny Holland can fill in Doug Armstrong with where things were at. But again, according to the CBA, you can only offer so much anyway, unless you want to go into the next tier in terms of what the required compensation would be. So the Blues went as high as they could possibly go without having to offer up a first-round pick, where a second-round pick is the compensation. Same thing with Dylan Holloway. They went as high as they could go in terms of what they could offer him salary-wise without having to offer anything higher than a third-round pick. But the agent, from what I understand, played a huge role in roping in Dylan Holloway's agent, who I don't think has a ton of experience. And maybe I shouldn't say he doesn't have a lot of experience, but I don't think he has a ton of clients. And, I think maybe this is something, when you look at everything in terms of how it all plays out, this is where you need experience. This is why you pay certain general managers. And why, if you're a player, you better make a decision when you choose an agent or an advisor or whatever you want to call them when you're a teenager. You better make sure they know what they're doing. And in this case, it's pretty obvious that they do. And, this is why, Tom Stillman, the owner of the Blues, why he invests in people like Doug Armstrong, because of his experience, his ability to do these type of maneuvers. And it's why Doug Armstrong brings in people like, the Tim Taylors of the world and the Peter Chiarellis of the world, the Dave Taylors of the world, the Al McInneses, the Keith Kachucks. I mean, all these people who have a tremendous amount of experience. Scott Mellenby. Different types of experiences, but together and collectively, it's one hell of a group who know what they're doing. And that's the proof here. So agent roping in other agent, getting two players on board, getting two players to sign, keeping it quiet, signing the players at a time when, as Elliot Friedman pointed out, and he's 100% accurate, at a time when you cannot go out and maybe bring in a player who has, arbitration rights, and then you can, buy out a player on your roster in an effort to open up necessary cap space, because that would be allowed. If they were to go out and trade for a player who's got arb rights, and that in alone would allow you to, utilize a second buyout window and buy out a player, which would create cap space. Now, the wild card here could be Evander Kane in terms of what they do with him, and how significant his injury is, if he needs surgery, all that type of stuff. That is, I guess, to be determined where that plays out. I did talk to a source with the Oilers within the last 24 hours. And I know it's not much, and somebody tried to chirp me on Twitter, and I get it. And they say, okay, well, that means nothing. And but I'm just trying to advance the story as much as you possibly can. I think they are in the early stages. They are certainly trying to figure out what they're going to do and make a decision. Are they going to keep one player? Are they going to keep two players? I had a poll question on my Twitter account about how you see this playing. I think most people see the Blues getting one of the two and Edmonton keeping one of the two. And that's kind of the consensus. Whether the Blues get Broberg or they get Holloway, who knows how that's going to play out. I think the conventional wisdom would suggest that the Blues have a better chance of getting Broberg versus Holloway, simply because of the cap situation with Edmonton, and Broberg is due to make more money than Holloway. But, we'll see. We'll see. Who knows, man? They may let both of them walk. I've heard people say, well, Cody Ceci is a guy that Edmonton may look to move. If you're a team, and I can tell you this, and this is the way general managers are thinking around the NHL. I don't think anyone's looking to help Edmonton anytime soon. I mean, teams were upset when they got Connor McDavid to begin with. But if I'm a general manager, I would say, hey, you worry about negotiating with your Leon Draisaitl's and Connor McDavid. Don't ask me to bail you out so you can keep another scoring winger and another top 10 pick in Philip Broberg. It's just kind of the way it goes. I mean, it's like a gamesmanship, I guess, But unless you want to attach a first-round pick or a high second-round pick or whatever it's going to be, maybe I would consider taking one of your contracts. But, it may be a situation like that where you're forced to give up some significant compensation and in an effort to move a contract. That's not going to be easy for Edmonton to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out like everybody else. A couple other things real quick. The rookie tournament. You know, for years the Blues went to the Traverse City Prospect Tournament that was hosted by the Detroit Red Wings. Last year it was the first year they didn't go there in years. It's always funny when the Blues had no prospects, they used to win the tournament. And then when they had all the high-end prospects, when they started bringing in the Oshis and the Eric Johnsons and the Petrangelos and the Patrick Berglunds and David Perrons and Lars Ellers, Ian Coles, all those guys, and they could never do well in these tournaments. But when they had no prospects, they used to win it. But the Blues are no longer participating in the Traverse City Prospects Tournament. And now they are, collaborating with Chicago and Minnesota, Kyle Davidson, Billy Guerin, the two GMs from the Blackhawks, and the Minnesota Wild, along with Doug Armstrong. They've decided, hey, let's just have a rotation, 3-city rotation. Last year it was in Minnesota, and where we'll have the rookie tournament in a different city each year, consisting of these 3 teams. It doesn't need to be a tournament. I mean, it's an opportunity for these guys to play games, to get their feet underneath them, and maybe even more importantly for the organization to watch them play in a competitive environment leading into main training camp. I mean, it's a great way to kick off training camp. And it's a great way for a player to enter camp either with a ton of confidence or maybe not a lot of confidence, depending on how they perform in this tournament. So you're going to have some good players performing or participating for the Blues. Guys like, Dalibor Dvorsky, for example, is going to be in there. Last year you had Connor Bedard playing for Chicago. I don't think the crowds were great in Minnesota last year. It's going to be a packed house. It'll be a packed house at the Centene Community Ice Center. And I think it's free. All the games are going to be streamed on the Blues website with Chris Kerber and Joe Vitale, like on the mic, giving you some information on all these guys. So it's all good. I'm looking forward to having that here in St. Louis. Logan Brown, St. Louis kid. He is going to Tampa Bay on a professional tryout. He last played in the Tampa Bay organization. I don't even know if he played. Last year he missed the entire season. He was sent down to Syracuse, made one-way money, but it was unable to play all season long. He had hip surgery. He had back issues for a long time, and I think they were able to identify what the issue was, and now he feels great. Says he's healthiest he's been in years. He's been training with Jordan Kyrou, and that incredible skate that they all participate in Toronto is a great skate. A bunch of NHLers that are training in Toronto in the summer, obviously, and they've got a great skate. And Logan has been living with Kyrou all summer, and not paying any rent either. He's living for free. He's just in charge of, making dinner every night and getting the groceries and being the cook. That's a good trade-off, though. I would be the cook if it meant I didn't have to pay rent. And I would do that trade any day of the week. I think that's a hell of a trade. I get free rent. All I have to do is cook. I'll do that. In a $10,000 a month house, it's fine with me. Sign me up for that one. But happy for Logan, man. I hope he's healthy. I hope he gets an opportunity to get back into the NHL and to show that he belongs in the NHL, that he can play in the NHL. And get an opportunity to really get that NHL career going. You know, he's had chances. He's had moments where he's been in the lineup here in St. Louis, previously in Ottawa. But again, he hadn't been healthy. He says he hasn't been healthy. Now he has been. He's been skating with the Tampa Bay skating coach. Has been out there in Toronto. He's been working with the skating coach. So, a great opportunity for Logan Brown. We wish him the best of luck. We'll be paying attention. This guy was a hell of a player coming up, man. He was so good. And didn't go to the U.S. program, but made the U.S. program, but decided to go to the OHL instead. And worked out for him. Became the 11th overall draft pick back in 2016. And so we'll see where it goes now with Logan Brown. Best of luck, Logie. Speaking of St. Louis players, Matthew Tkachuk is back on the ice. He's skating with the Blues players that are in town right now. There's not a lot of guys. A lot of guys are expected to be coming in next week. They'll start rolling into town next week. So, Matthew Tkachuk's been out there right now. Sundqvist, Colton Parayko, Jordan Binnington. He's been training like a madman. I keep saying my prediction is Kyrie's going to have a hell of a year this year. He's going to have a breakout year. I say the same thing about Mitch Marner. Real quick about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Congratulations to Austin Matthews. I felt the press conference was a little bit much. I love the tradition and the history with Toronto. I love everything about it. As a hockey fan, I love the history with hockey in Toronto, the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they do it differently. Not quite to the extent of Montreal, but I feel like Montreal's ceremonies, their pregame ceremonies, their press conferences, they just feel way more genuine. It's like kind of like the way it is. It's like very artistic, so historic. And I know there's a ton of history in Toronto as well. But, you know, when they hand him his jersey in a box, like it's the gold jacket, like he's going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame or something, into Canton. I didn't know what he was going to pull out of the box. I mean, one of the best press conferences I ever went to was when the Blues named Alex Pietrangelo captain here in St. Louis. It was a great press conference, very emotional. The assistant captains come up, they give him the jersey. It was classy. It didn't have to be in a box. Like, what are they pulling out of the box? Is it gold-plated? Like, what is it? Little much, Toronto. And we all want to, like, act like everything is great. Listen, no player wants to be stripped of the captaincy. No player wants to go through that type of embarrassment. I think it's a smart decision by Toronto. I think Austin Matthews should be the captain. I think they should look for a new identity. He's scored 69 goals. It's not going to make him a better player. But maybe it impacts the dressing room. Who knows? In a positive way. But it's not like, you know, John Tavares is just sitting there saying, I think this is a great idea, guys. Absolutely. And he's reading from listen, this is all you need to know. He's reading from a piece of paper. So that tells you right there that the whole thing was scripted, right? Don't tell me it's not scripted when he's reading from a piece of paper. Come on, JT. Kind of tells you everything you need to know. You couldn't memorize 2 lines. You couldn't say, we congratulate Austin Matthews as the 26th captain in Toronto Maple Leafs history. Congratulations. It is my honor to present Austin Matthews as the 26th captain in Toronto Maple Leafs history. They didn't even give me the script and I just memorized it. Like, have him practice it for a couple days and be like, okay, we're not doing the press conference until JT has this 2-line piece of paper memorized. We're gonna wait. They chose to roll with it. But again, I didn't know what was going to come out of the box. But there it was. It was his blue Toronto Maple Leafs jersey with a big letter C on it. I'm a big Austin Matthews guy, though, man. Congratulations to Matthews. And I'm sure Chief had a lot to do with this, too, man. You kidding me? Craig Berube's been watching everything everyone else is watching, too. He sees it. They need a new identity, new voice, new leader. You're bringing in a new coach. If you're not bringing in a lot of new players, you got to create some buzz in the offseason. Just create some noise, some energy with the fan base. So, you know, with that being said, it was probably smart to do it right now when nothing else is going on, except for these offer sheets. We're going to get into things with Gene Principe, host, reporter with Sportsnet Television during the Edmonton Oilers games. He's been doing this for a long time. He'll have some opinions. I'm looking forward to those. First Community brings us Hockey Sense each and every week here on our podcast platforms, live from the Half Coast studios. We love being here at Half Coast. Aiden, Maddie, Alex, the whole crew. Jason, we appreciate all their help in getting this up on all the platforms throughout every single Friday that we do this. Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop, baby. Download that app, get all the great deals. They're so good they call them steals. Don't sleep on the party supplies. They've got great party supplies. If you got back-to-school parties, fall parties coming up, Halloween parties right around the corner too, soccer team parties, whatever it is. You get all your party supplies from Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download that app, get those great discounts, get those great deals. Some locations have drive-thrus, and they all have curbside assistance. So if you don't want to get out of your car, just order it online. They'll bring it out to your car for you. It's that simple. Best selection of beer, wine, and booze. They've got that incredible beer cooler, too. Always nice and cool. It's always nice. Even when it's hot outside, people, sometimes they're looking for me. They're like, hey, where's Stricky? I haven't seen Stricky in a while. He's probably hanging out in that beer cooler again. Yeah, you got to keep it cool. I love Dirt Cheap Fun Fun. Love having them on board here on Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Four Hands Brewing Company, man, have you checked out that new tasting room in Kirkwood? It's incredible. I'm going to a party coming up a week from this Saturday at the new tasting room in Chesterfield. That one's still new, too. They've got so many new things happening. But they also have the Cam and Strick podcast, Mango Lemonade Hard Seltzer, on shelves once again, coming back September 4th or 24th. You still might be able to find it in certain locations, as there still may be some left. But listen, they sell out of that very, very quickly. Cam Jansen and I are going to be doing some promotions at different locations throughout St. Louis, so we'll let you know where those are going to be. So get that Mango Lemonade back on the shelves coming up on September 24th at all locations where you get your Four Hands Brewing Company products. Lordo's Diamonds and LordosDiamonds.com. Get that special someone in your life something special. No better place to do it than Lordo's Diamonds. They've been around for almost 70 years. Are you kidding me? 70 years. They're the best in the business. You don't last 70 years unless you're really good at what you do. And Jimmy Lordo, you're the best. Mike Lordo, you're also the best. You can have more than one best. You got Pat, you got everybody over there. I won't go anywhere else but Lordo's Diamonds. They are the absolute best at what they do. If you're looking to pop that question, and no one does engagement rings better than Mike and Jimmy Lordo. You walk in there, you say, hey, my budget is $300,000 or my budget's $3,000. And they're going to find you that perfect ring. Get in there today. 314 Sports Cards. Listen, I want to tell you about this because they've got an appearance coming up, and Devin Sant cannot join us on this week's edition of Hockey Sense, the 24th of August. So that's coming up in a little over a week or so. From 10 a.m. to noon. They're going to have a week from this Saturday. Trent Frederick's going to be live for an appearance at the store. Boston Bruins power forward, tough guy. Go say hi to Trent Frederick. Get in there on the 24th of 314 Sports Cards, 9640 Olive Boulevard. Best selection of hockey cards you find anywhere in North America, by the way. They've got individual cards. They have packs. They have boxes. You go to all these other places, you got to buy these monster boxes, and these parents are forced to pay like $60 for these boxes. Well, no, you can get individual packs, or you can get the individual cards. My son got a limited edition Gordie Howe the other day. It was really cool. And you know what? It was his friend's, his little buddy from his hockey team. It was his birthday party, and he got him a limited edition Connor Bedard card. And the kid comes up to Ty, my son, the next day at practice, and he said, you know what my favorite present was? He goes, it was that Connor Bedard card. True story. That's what the kids want. Get out there and get out there today, 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. Say hi to Devin and everybody. They're the best in the business. Nobody does it better. All right, Gene Principe, he's going to join us next. I can't wait to have this conversation. We'll get into Philip Broberg. Who is he? How good is he? What kind of player is he? And what is going on with the Edmonton Oilers? Dylan Holloway, what's the scouting report on him? Gene Principe, one of the best in the business. He joins me next. I'm Andy Strickland. This is Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Stay with us. And the hair looks great too, Gene.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to make it look good for you. It's usually the summer's off season for my hair.
Yeah, I know. And so we just roll, man. How are you though? Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. You know?
No problem. You know what? It's been a wild, somewhat short summer. Oilers finished up June 24th, wrap things up. We thought it was going to potentially be a parade on the Wednesday after Game 7 on Monday. Turned out to be exit interviews and departures for the team. And on Friday, I was on a plane to Germany to watch Euro Soccers and a family trip through Germany and Italy. So it's been short, as you know, from 2019 when the season goes till the latter part of June. There isn't much turnaround, but it's been a good summer.
I would have thought that you would have made the cut for Connor McDavid's wedding, Gene. You,
Andy, this is hilarious because uh, first of all, I saw the photos, and obviously I've had a chance to get to know Lauren O'Connor a lot.
mhm.
Lauren less, but she's involved not only with the team but the community. And when you're connected to the captain, it's hard to not have a profile. But every time I get asked whether I was invited to the wedding, more and more I think I should have been. I start to think, wait a minute, you know how it is when people start to ask you, you start to go, well, maybe I should have been invited. I was not invited. I had it planned that, if they had won the cup on the night of Game 7, generally, as you know, you get access on ice, and I was gonna, probably interview him and Lauren, and I've got to know his parents, Brian and Kelly, quite well, and his brother Cam. And I was gonna say, just so you know, the date, I saved the date. I'm open. If you have anybody drop out, but I never got the call or the email, so we'll discuss it further when he's back for training camp.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it got lost in the mail. You never know. So it looked like they
Would
had
have
a
done
good
it the
time, though.
old-fashioned way. Yeah, I just didn't quite make the cut. I thought maybe if you needed a master of ceremonies or
Yeah.
somebody, but for sure it would have been. It's funny. Even my daughter was like, "Dad, if you get invited, like you're taking me, you're not taking mom." And I said, "No problem," because she's a big Oilers fan. In fact, we were going on a family trip to Europe, and my two sons went with my wife, and my daughter said, "Dad, I can't go. If the Oilers win the cup, I want to be here. I want to be at the parade." So she stayed behind with me. So our trip ended up being 2.5 weeks instead of 3.5 weeks.
Well, it's funny because, listen, when the Blues won the cup,
Mhm.
it was my 10th wedding anniversary that
Oh
summer.
yeah.
So the draft was in Vancouver a few days later, and I brought my wife out with me, and then we had planned to go spend 10 days in Whistler.
Oh,
Well, right when the 10-day period starts is when like some of these Stanley Cup parties are happening, right?
mm,
So
yeah.
I missed the first big one that was like going on. And
Well,
I'm in Whistler for our anniversary, and it's beautiful. But I'll tell you what, and it ended
yeah.
up being a no big deal because you ended up attending so many other events and being around the cup that entire summer. But the first one, I could not believe that I was missing
Yeah,
that
for sure.
party, Gene.
You start to think of things. Will you might you get a replica ring? Will you get? I would never expect to get a day with a cup. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not that possessive of it. But you start to think if Stuart Skinner gets, Stuart's a goaltender from Edmonton. If Stuart gets, or when he gets his day with the cup, if they win, might he invite you, or might
Hmm.
they say, hey, to the broadcasters, in the area, you get it for a quarter, an
Yeah.
evening. For sure, lots of things go through your head from being invited to, McDavid's wedding to what role will you play in the Stanley Cup? Will you be on, when I say on one of the floats, I don't mean people are there to see me, but will you be reporting, from one of the floats, or will
Yeah.
you be, standing by when you're that close as St. Louis was in a Game 7, you have to prepare for the best with the idea that you're going to win the cup. You can't win the cup and go, okay, let's get a parade together. So lots of ideas go dancing through your head, and unfortunately, from an Edmonton standpoint, the ideas end up just being ideas because you don't win the cup, and none of those things that you think you will be involved in or might be involved in end up happening.
Yeah. I know. And I went to a couple of the team player parties and they were unbelievable. And the Blues were gracious to the broadcasters here in town too, in the Hall of Fame and all that. And several of the broadcasters got time with the cup and had some parties too. So that was it was a great experience. And listen, Edmonton's going to win one at some point. I mean, for a community. When you lose a Game 7, I can't imagine, especially watching the team come all the way back. Nobody thought they had a chance to even extend it to a Game 6, let alone a Game 7, and be as close as they were. With the greatest player in the world on your side. How did the city react? Are they over it yet? Is there is there a moment where you turn the page and now say, "Wow, there's an opportunity to do it again this year"?
Uh, Yeah, I would say, Andy, great question. I would say yes and no. Crushed, I think, is the first word that comes to mind. Having seen, I felt like the fans, and I saw it in St. Louis. The fans to me were like Connor McDavid. They just kept raising their game to another level,
Yeah.
thinking that, they couldn't do more. It couldn't be more exciting. There wouldn't be more people. It just day in and day out and game in and game out, it raised to a certain level that game 6 was unbelievable. The amount of people, the excitement that was there, the way the Oilers played, it really was level to what happened in '06 from a game standpoint of it wasn't 3-0, but it was 3-1 against Carolina. And the Oilers played, their best game of the Stanley Cup in game 6 to get to game 7 against Carolina. And it was just so eerily similar and somewhat eerily similar too. In game 7, I remember Edmonton against Carolina in '06, they were down 2-1, and Fernando Pisani, who was a hero during that time, a local kid who nearly tied it at 2, didn't happen, and Carolina scored an empty net goal, and it felt virtually the same. Like it was so weird to be 18 years apart and yet end up with the same results, so close to what happened, almost 2 decades difference. But for sure, the city was in mourning when it comes to a sports mourning. And grocery store, I was going to say at the barber's, but I haven't gone to the barber's.
The hair looks good, Gene. It's looking good.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. And wherever you went, people were ready for the season to start because they were so hurt. I would say this, though, disappointment in the result, but I never ever got a feeling that there was any disappointment in the team. They understood that they really gave it their best, that they fought back from a historic deficit. And it was amazing to see how many people made it to Florida for game 7. It was just, I mean, Florida and Edmonton, this is not a close trip and not an inexpensive trip and not easy to get tickets, but thousands of people embarked on long journeys through multiple stops and layovers just to get there. And so I felt terribly gutted for the players because as much as the fans want it, nobody wants it more than the players who've invested everything they've got in it. But the fans invest a lot of time, sacrifices, and I've known people to have spent $20, $25, $30,000. I met up with a man, Ted, at a golf tournament at MC yesterday, and he went to every single game.
Wow.
He did not miss a game. He went to every road game, and I saw him. I would see him. I saw him with his wife, and then his wife said, "I'm taking a break." And then I saw him with his nephew. He went to every single game, and that kind of commitment. How can you not feel bad for Ted and others who did the same thing, whether it was every game or some games? It was not cheap and it was not easy, but people did it. So it was heartbreaking, but I think it would have been worse to have been swept. Easier in some ways because it's over fast and the pain is done. It doesn't continue. But getting to a game 7, it showed the hard determination of the club. And I think anyone, excluding Florida, thought that the Oilers could find a way, would find a way, and they just couldn't quite do it.
All right. Well, one more question on that before we get into some other stuff. But and we're thinking about Ted. If you're watching this, we're thinking about, because listen, it was tough for Ted and a lot of other people. Hey, you know what other similarity there could have been is because Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe. Chris Pronger should have won the Conn Smythe, I think, back in 2006. I mean, he had made an incredible case for himself. Did McDavid ever comment on winning the Conn Smythe? Did you ever get a comment on him from him about that?
We didn't. It felt like it was, I don't know, pouring salt in the wound to ask after the game. It felt like that wasn't the right time. He was in a tournament with Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman holds a golf tournament for charity. That would have been probably about 2 weeks after, and he quickly off the top said, "Listen, I'm not really answering hockey questions. I'm here to support my teammates, support a charity or charities." So it didn't happen then. I would think that someone somewhere probably when training camp gets underway, or as we call them, as you know, captain skates, when the players start arriving and they have these sort of loose fitting get-togethers on
Hmm.
the ice where they skate, and there is some media availability. Maybe it's then, but I feel bad, and for any of your viewers and listeners that might have seen some of the video that was released just in the last week of the Oilers locker room after Game
Yeah,
7.
who released
It
that? Where'd
was
they find that video?
so the Oilers do great work called the Oil Drop.
Hmm.
What a stretch, hey! And it is behind the scenes broadcasts that you just do not see some of this stuff, and that's something that was shot by them on the night of June 24th
Wow.
and released. I would say, what is it, 6 weeks later, and it was just gut wrenching. I
Yeah.
mean, when we say the term, you could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah.
You could have heard a pin drop. It was that, and you saw it, Andy. It was that quiet in there. You've been to Florida. The Florida room, the way it's situated, that you don't really have access. We were, I would say, like a couple of double doors away from the actual room. I remember in 2006 we were discussing, and yeah, Chris Pronger could have easily been voted Conn Smythe. Fernando Pisani was, a choice. They ended up choosing someone who's just from outside Edmonton, Cam Ward, the
Yeah.
goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Great
But I'll never
selection too.
forget,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of my lasting images is Ryan Smith walking off the ice crying.
Mhm.
And that's when I say that nobody wants it more than them, at differing degrees. But Ryan Smith, a heart and soul player, Alberta kid who grew up an Oiler fan and played for them, it just showed you how much it meant to them. And so it's been a whirlwind of emotions, but I think people are ready to get going. And I'm sure that the Oilers, after they have their weddings and their birthday parties and their time off, that it's back to work and training camps around the corner. And the goal is to do what Florida did, and that's get to another, consecutive cup final and finish it off with a victory.
Yeah. That cup probably would have been at the wedding. Gene, it probably would have,
I'm sure,
you know?
there's no doubt that it would have been at the wedding. There's, Zach Hyman's another Ontario guy. Evan Bouchard is an Ontario
Yeah.
guy. Ryan McLeod, who's, now with Buffalo, is an Ontario guy. Warren Fogle, who's now with LA, is an Ontario guy.
Hmm.
So, and I think it's hard to tell for sure, but I think Connor invited every single one of his teammates, because there were some teammates there that were newer to the team that were there. So, and
Wow.
that just, again, leadership comes in all different forms. And I think inviting every single one of your teammates, if that was the case, and I think it was, is another form of it for the captain.
Yeah. No, so much respect for Connor McDavid. All right. So much shock that goes into an offer sheet being signed.
Yeah.
Nobody saw this coming, including the Edmonton Oilers. I don't think they anticipated this whatsoever. The Blues did a masterful job of certainly keeping it quiet from that standpoint and making sure that
Yeah.
it didn't get out. Because there's some things that Edmonton probably could have done to prepare themselves in the event something like this were to happen. What would be the bigger loss, in your opinion, Gene, between the two players, Broberg or Holloway?
Well, first of all, absolutely. I was actually in Toronto covering a tennis tournament, which I don't normally do, but through the Olympics and a little being short-staffed, I covered a tennis tournament. In fact, with NFL and NHL tie-in, Jessica Pagula, whose parents own those two pro sports franchises, ended up being the winner
Wow.
of that event. And I landed around 10:30 local time on the Tuesday, and my phone was blowing up.
Wow.
Friends, family, ex, any form of connection. It was amazing that these offer sheets had come in. Now, I was here in '07 when the Oilers themselves put out some offer sheets for Thomas Vanek. Back then, it was 7 years, and I think 50 million bucks, which 50 million bucks is still a lot of money in today's NHL, and that was 17 years
Yeah.
ago. But Kevin Lowe, the Oilers had been to the '06 final. '06, '07 hadn't gone their way, so they were trying to make a splash, and then and the Sabres matched that. And then Dustin Penner was 5 years, I think 21.5 million, or 6 years, 20. It ended up being around $5.5 million a year, and Anaheim did not match that. So offer sheet is kind of one of those dirty terms in the National Hockey League. It just It's in there, right? It's CBA mandated. It's not it's not illegal. Sometimes people feel that it is immoral. But it's there. So I was definitely shocked. The summer is usually a quiet time. I think a lot of the conversation around here would have been more geared towards Leon Draisaitl and him signing a deal going into his final season, and Connor's into his last 2 seasons of his long-term deal. So it was more contract talk, I think, than offer sheet talk. So yeah, that hit hard. Scott Stevens, like, and Blues fans know what that
Yeah.
was like when he played.
Ooh.
So then you start to understand it, and I guess kind of work it through. And it is a week that the Oilers have to match. At the golf tournament I emceed, there was so much conversation about it, and it was, go to one group and it's like they got to match both. You go to another group and, well, they just need to match this, and
Yeah.
some others said, screw it, don't match either. And one of the things that happens, I think, Andy, is the players get sort of, I don't know. It's like it's not their fault, and I wouldn't say it's their problem, but people start to kind of look at the players, and I wouldn't do that at all. I mean, that's an offer sheet that's come from another team towards two players. So who do they match? How do they match? Phillips is, well, basically double what Dylan's is, and so I don't know, my friend. I have not. The intel's been pretty quiet on what they're going to do. I think as secretive as the Blues were in issuing the offer sheets, the
Hmm.
Oilers are in turn approaching it the same way in whether they will match. I think they match. I think they would probably look to match both. I don't know if they can afford to match both with salary cap implications, and as they work through their money to see exactly how this is going to happen. And it's interesting because Philip was up and down, and was really an extra player. I don't want to say an extra part because that seems like someone that's not going to be used or put into the lineup. But once he got in, he wasn't coming out.
Yeah.
He played unbelievable for Edmonton. It was one of the great revelations of the playoffs that initially would he play, then would he play more than a minor role to playing a big role and nearly becoming a Stanley Cup champ. Dylan floated sort of back and forth, sometimes forward, third, second line, at times a top six forward. Has some skill, former first round pick in Vancouver. When you were at your anniversary party or get together for 10 years, that was where Philip Broberg was drafted. And so
Yeah.
a lot was expected of him. And so I don't know. I don't know, Andy, and I'm being honest. I think that they won't let both just sort of walk away or be offer sheeted away, but who it is, how they do it, when they do it, do they take to the 7 days? Philip went up a lot. Like, so I saw the percentage. I mean, it's a lot. Dylan's is more manageable.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Long answer at the end of it, 3 words. I don't know.
Yeah. I believe Philip Broberg was Kenny Howland's first
Yeah,
draft pick,
he,
right?
he was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When.
yeah. He was a month. Kenny was hired in May of 2018
Hmm.
and or 19, and it was his first pick, and there was lots of excitement that Philip. He's kind of gone back and forth, and to Philip's not so much his defense, but as you know, and Ken Holland has said many times, marinating, over marinating
Yeah.
at times with players to spend in the minors to work their way up. And Dylan Holloway was the same way. Dylan was a 2020. He was a COVID pick for the Oilers, and for a while he was really a long distance draftee. We didn't see him. We didn't get a chance to watch him in person. He had a couple of injuries, particularly a wrist injury that needed to be redone, and I think reoperated on.
Hmm.
So we're operated on again. So they were because for so long the Oilers just plugged and played, right? Ryan Nugent Hopkins, you're in. Taylor Hall, you're in. Nail Yakupov, you're in. Darnell Nurse, you're in. Leon Draisaitl, you're in. Connor McDavid, you're in. Like it was, they either didn't have the opportunity to leave them sit in the minors because this team wanted to win. And so when those two guys came along, it was a little bit different. So Philip certainly was highly thought of and still is. We just, I haven't, in the summer, one of the things I don't do a lot, my daughter looks at the schedule more than I do. I just kind of get away from it, but I'm going to look, I want to wait to see what happens with the 7 days and whether they match or not. But either way, the first team I'm going to look at is when they play the Blues because it's going to be interesting either way. And in something that I really don't think I never heard a word about it, and not just about the Blues. I just didn't hear much about any kind of an offer sheet for those two young guys. In hindsight, then you start to hear it more, particularly the way the playoffs went, and if you had the salary cap money, those are two young parts that could make a difference for your club.
Yeah. Well, that's where the agents come into play. I mean, the agents, listen, it's their job to get the best deal for the player.
Yeah.
Once you get to July 1st, they can talk to other clubs. They identify also which clubs have cap space, which clubs have needs. It was the perfect storm because the Blues have a need for these types of players. They've got the cap space, and, Edmonton's in a situation where they're handcuffed. They've got some big-time negotiations looming, as you obviously know. How do you see that playing out with Draisaitl? We can't characterize these as slam dunks, right? I mean, is there a real possibility that these don't get done? And we're talking about these players potentially playing elsewhere over the course of the next few years. Could you see that possibly happening?
You know what? I don't know if it's my heart or my head saying this. I grew up, listen, I remember 1984 being 17 years old. And at that time, we used to go party down Jasper Avenue and, hitting Jasper Avenue. We didn't have such a thing as a watch party where thousands would get together. You might be at a bar. Chances are it was you and your buddies and your family that would sit together, 10 people in a living room or a family room or a basement. And away you went watching it, and then you would spill out into the streets and start to enjoy it, and high-fiving strangers. And well, there were no fist pumps back then. That wasn't a thing. It was basically high fives and hugs and congratulations. So I remember those days, and then I remember the departure. And we just passed the 36th anniversary of Wayne Gretzky getting traded, and obviously spending some time with the Blues along the way. August 9th. And so, I think with Leon, it's hard to say it's a slam dunk till everything's signed, but I think it's pretty close to that. And it has a lot to do with the wedding. We go back to the wedding, and Leon and Connor are, as tight as two people who aren't from the same family could be. I mean, they are best of buddies, spend their time together at the rink, away from the rink, on vacations. Their girlfriends, now wife and fiance, as Leon got engaged over the summer at the end of the season. They're really, really best of friends. So, and I know it's not just that. There's a personal side and a professional side, but I really think that Leon wants to win a cup, more than a cup. I think he loves Edmonton and wants to stay here. And whether that's a 4-year deal, he signed for an 8-year deal, and your VP of hockey operations, Peter Chiarelli, got lots of heat for lots of things, but the one thing that was left standing was the deal that he signed with Leon for $8.5 million. That just has, I don't know if you can ever say someone's underpaid for 8.5, but Art Ross, Hart Trophy, I think any team in the league would take him, and any team would have taken him for 8.5, an unbelievable deal. So I think Leon will sign. I don't think that that's going to be an issue unless there is some kind of an unforeseen snag that I can't imagine. I think they'll have a easy time or a relatively not difficult time. And I don't know if negotiations are ever easy, but I think they will make their way to him signing a long-term deal for 13.5 to 14.5, somewhere in there. Evan Bouchard needs to get signed soon. Of course, Connor needs to get signed. So I think that'll all work its way out. But They have Zach Hyman at 5.5. They have Evander Kane at just over 5. They've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at just over 5. So they've got some, I would say, some cap-friendly deals. But if they want to keep Dylan and they want to keep Philip, I'm not sure how they'll work out a way, but they have to see what they're willing to give up or what they have to give up to make sure those two stay on. But I think Leon is going to sign. I think sooner rather than later. We'll see on the exact money and see on the exact years, but I would be very surprised if Leon Draisaitl was somewhere else in the near future wearing a different NHL uniform.
Yeah, it's fascinating just to see how all this play out. If Edmonton's able to keep the players, how do they create the necessary space to do that? Who moves? What kind of compensation may they have to attach to a trade to get a team to take a contract? You got the Evander Kane situation, which is kind of the wild card hanging over everybody's heads. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm surprised more teams don't do this, and I don't think people should take it as personal, maybe as some do, because of what you said. Really it's within the rights of a GM to do that according to the CBA.
Yeah, I know, Andy. I honestly, it's something that doesn't get done very often. When it does, it raises a firestorm. Ooh. Like people get mad. I think Jeff Jackson, who's the president and CEO of hockey operations, he was an agent till not that long ago, so he knows the business from both sides, I think, as well, if not better than anyone. Yeah. Not anyone in hockey, but anyone who has this happen to his club. Stan Bowman was just hired, weeks ago, so that's fresh for him. So I don't know. Kenny Holland and I know Doug Armstrong are best of friends. Kenny was with the Oilers and not now. They go on some really, and I don't know, you're aware of it. They go on some great trips to
they're on Scotland
one now. Are they on one right now?
Right now, yeah.
So I know that Kenny has talked often about Doug, but I want to say this. Listen, just because two people hang out together, and they're not the only two GMs that know each other.
Correct.
Lots of them do. They are able to split personal and professional. I mean, they're in a job that they cannot kind of let their guard down to let things go because they're a friend. Mm-hmm. But certainly people think, well, if Ken Holland was still the GM, well, Ken Holland's, not the GM. And I don't think that Doug's going, okay, because Kenny's not there, I'm going to, stick it to the Oilers. He's trying to do what's best for his team. But this is a term, the offer sheet, that just raises a lot of reaction. And I remember when Kevin Lowe did the Anaheim one, Brian Burke was furious. Yeah. And, they joked about, well, it wasn't a joke at the time, having a scrap in a barn and settling it. And they have since settled their differences. But and listen, sports people, whether it be a fan, whether it be someone in the front office, whether it be, someone who cleans the glass, we're passionate, right? We're passionate. Sports is about passion. And so that passion comes out when something like this happens. But Doug Armstrong is doing his thing, as maybe surprising or shocking as it might be on the Edmonton side of things. And now, Edmonton goes to work and gets to think about what they want to do and how they want to react. So the 7 days can't, quite finish fast enough. I don't know if I think if you're Edmonton and you play into the drama of it, you're going to let St. Louis, hang and wait till the end. So, I think, Andy, August is usually the quietest month in hockey. It's because July, end of June, you got the draft, and you have free agency, and then it spills over and people make some signings, and whether they're free agents or their own players. But then latter part of July and August is kind of quiet time. Well, that changed drastically and I guess dramatically with the offer sheet that came on Tuesday. Offer sheets.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. I don't know. Maybe you have a clock ticking it down at your house right there. Gene.
You should, yeah. Like that's usually what you have, right? We have that to deadline day
I
as
know.
the clock ticks,
Yeah.
and to 3 Eastern, 2 Central, 1 Mountain, 12 Pacific, and I'm sure there's people and that will have a clock in their basements or family rooms, dining rooms, ticking away to the 7 days. So it'll be interesting. I remember how interesting it was in '07.
Yeah.
With the 2 offer sheets that the Oilers made, one stuck, one didn't. So I'm really curious. At the end of the day, Andy, I think we have an inside track because we have access to coaches, GMs, players. But in the end, I'm just a fan with a microphone, really. And so I'm curious from a fan standpoint to see what happens, and then the broadcast side to see how that impacts, what we do, because it is summertime. But don't think when training camp starts and we start doing our first broadcast that this ends up playing, a role, and either way, a role depending on what happens when the Blues face the Oilers.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be it'll be great. I'm looking forward to that already. And it's funny you said that. We'll go circle the calendar, especially if the Blues end up getting one or both of these guys. So we'll see how it plays out. Gene, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it very much. Always respect your work. Love what you do there. You bring a lot of fun to the broadcast there with the Oilers, and so we'll do it again. We'll have you back on. I want to talk about your story too, about how you got involved in the business and all that. I'd love to hear your background, Andy, and all
listen,
that.
I got a lot of respect for you. You're able to combine entertainment and information. You're a hardworking guy. You break stories, you get scoops, and you have a real good rapport with the players, which shows me that I'm not saying they don't like you, because they do, but most importantly, they respect you, and that's because of everything you've built in St. Louis and around the NHL. So look forward to talking again and seeing you again, and let's see what happens over the next few days.
All right. Thanks, Gene. Looking forward to it. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the rest of the summer. Yep. Take care. That was Gene Principe from Sportsnet Television in Edmonton. Does an unbelievable job with their broadcast. And this is going to be, like he said, it's fascinating for a lot of people to see how this is going to play out over the next several days. And again, that's the most important thing here. This is within the right of a team to do. This is not some angry move by the Blues. I think they're doing whatever they can strategically and creatively to enhance their roster. And the agent, man. I can't stress that enough. I think it's a hell of a job by the agents, too. I always get fascinated within the business side of the game. I love the collective bargaining agreement. I'm not going to sit back and say that I just read and comb through it every night, but I do love reading the CBA when stuff like this does happen, because there's so many things that go into it. So all of you who think you could just become a NHL GM overnight because you like this guy or like that guy, or you think this guy's a good right winger, or this guy should be on the power play, there's so much more that goes into it. The hockey part of it it's crucial. It's very, very important, but there's a level of intelligence that gets involved too. Arco Construction, they know what they're doing, taking St. Louis hockey to the next level, one ice rink at a time. They built that Centene Community Ice Center. It's a beautiful facility. I was out there yesterday. Saw Jordan Binnington yesterday. I was also at the Maryville University ice rink the last couple of days. They built that 2-sheet facility. They built the Shark Tank. They also bring the fun to St. Louis. Putt Shack, Topgolf. They do it all, and they're looking to build additional rinks here in the St. Louis area. They have become kind of the ice rink gurus of St. Louis when it comes to building rinks. Nobody does it better than Arco Construction. John Comlos, Jeff Cook, everybody over there with Arco, baby. First Community, listen, open up a new bank account today. First Community voted one of the best workplaces to work in all of St. Louis. That's by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, not only this year, but 12 years running. They're unbelievable. First Community, you're looking for a job, no better place to work than First Community. You're looking to open up a bank account, no better place to do that than First Community. Credit card, you want to get your dog's picture or family photo on your debit card, you can do that too. FirstCommunity.com, and also get your son or daughter signed up for Little Blues. Plus, they sponsor the St. Louis Blues Hall of Fame. I'm a voter. I'm on the committee. I submitted my votes. That announcement will come out relatively soon as well. On next week's Hockey Sense, we'll start looking into the upcoming rookie tournament. We'll have certainly some reaction as to how this plays out over the course of the weekend and then into Tuesday. I believe the deadline for Edmonton to match is end of day Tuesday, which is 5 o'clock Eastern, I believe. So 4 o'clock St. Louis time. Can't wait to see how that plays out. We thank all our sponsors, Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, your one-stop party shop. 314 Sports Cards, again, August 24th. Stop on in, say hi to Devin Samp, best selection of hockey cards, best staff, the friendliest staff, but Boston Bruins forward Trent Frederick, St. Louis kid, DeSmet High School, University of Wisconsin. He may have an opinion on Dylan Holloway. Go ask him. He'll be at 314 Sports Cards, 9640 Ala Boulevard, coming up on August 24th from 10 until noon. So stop by and say hi to Trent Frederick. Lordo's Diamonds, Paul's Market, get those steaks delivered, best in the business. Bespoke Apparel, looking for a new sport coat, whatever it is, new suit, go to where the NHL players go. Bespoke Apparel, right in the heart of Clayton. All right, for everybody affiliated with this edition of Hockey Sense, we appreciate Gene Principe from the Oilers broadcast team for joining us, for Aiden, for Maddie, for everybody affiliated with Hockey Sense. Everybody over at Travel House as well. They've been around for over 30 years. Book that vacation, spring breaks, winter vacations, cruises, domestic, international travel, European vacations. Travelhouse.com. That's Haus. Help bring us Hockey Sense on this edition, live from Half Coast Studios. I'm Andy Strickland, reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. Have a great weekend, St. Louis.